Awesome. Hey, let me see. Are we on? Maybe it'll show. Okay, there we go. What does the fucking thumbnail show? Oh, it shows UAB. That's perfect. I like it. Yeah. American Conference. Yeah, looks good. Oh, my mic's on. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Share this on Twitter real quick and Facebook. Look like it's my time again. It's a few were chosen golden boy, little baby, I am him. This shit ain't always what it seems. Swear these little niggas couldn't walk in Mama Queens. Cold world, I'm just blowing smoke into the breeze. Big dog, I'm just brushing off the fleas. Lights at the block is a light show. I'm with the mob and we don't move polite. I put 100 G's in a ledger and it's all for security. It's right, jumping at the beat, I'm a psycho. I share my pain and it gave me a life. I put my beef with the odds to the side, yeah, I showed them mercy. Pick me up when I'm down. When I'm down. It's a good day for a good day. Sending big love in a big way, yeah. It's a good day for a motherfucking good day. Yeah. Okay, a little bit of Tina, margarita, in a beach chair with my feet up, yeah. It's a good day for a motherfucking good day. Yeah. Just a little bit of that's all I need. Little bit of you time when I'm free. Just a little bit of you and I when the sun goes down tonight. Yeah. What would you do if we had it all wrong? Got what we want, but we still want more, you know. What would you do, yeah? What would you do if it all goes wrong? What would you do if we had it all wrong? Got what we want, but we still want more, you know. What would you do? What would you do if you got what you want? A little bit of luck is what I found. Yeah. Just a little pick me up when I'm down. Yeah. When I'm down. Just a little bit of liquor, that's all I need. Just a little bit of you time when I'm free. Just a little bit of you and I when the sun goes down tonight. I can't let nobody get me off of my way. Vibrate, I'ma let it vibrate. Yeah, let it vibrate. What would you do if we had it all wrong? Got what we want, but we still want more, you know. What would you do, yeah? What would you do if you got what you
Hey, pipe up, Hood Rich.
Doing something different, had to switch it up. Turned up in my section, every night we live it up. All my haters mad, but I don't give a fuck. All my haters mad, section. Every night we live it up. All my haters mad, but I don't give a fuck.
Second down and one.
I don't give a fuck.
It's Hill. Taysom Hill picks up the Saints first down, still going. Wow.
I don't care if you let how step. I don't care if you let how rip. I don't care if you let how step. I don't care if you let how rip. I got sauce, I got flavor. Getting all this paper. I got sauce, I got flavor. Getting all this paper. Plain Jane Paddock on my motherfucking wrist. They notice every time when I walk up in this bitch. Hustle, walk up in this bitch. Keep my Glock up in this bitch. Hustle, walk up in this bitch. Keep my Glock up in this bitch. My chopper hit. My chopper hit.
Martinez
My 48 hit.
steps up.
My 48 hit. I don't care if you let how step. I don't care if you let how rip. I don't care if you let how step. I don't care if you let how rip. Doing something different. I had to switch it up. Turned up in my section. Every night we live it up.
The Pigskin Mafia podcast proudly presents your 2023 American Athletic Conference season preview. Brought to you by TJ Riddell. For the love of the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very special podcast of the PM Mother FMP. I am your host, TJ Riddell, and with me is a very special guest of mine. And I gotta say, I never would have thought I'd own a dog here, let alone a pit bull, in the confines of, or the confines of, the garden, you know? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proudly to introduce to you Billy. Say hi to the folks here on the PMP. Get me down. All right, that's enough. All right, back to your palate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very good episode of the PMP. Believe this is episode 51, and I want to talk about something before I get into this. YouTube, stop copyright claiming shit that doesn't belong to somebody else's. That is ridiculous. I did my research, and YouTube just has bots that copyright claims certain portions of the video. If it's highlights, if it's music, the music I kind of understand about. But if it's something having to do with highlights, sporting highlights, NFL, college, it doesn't matter. If you have a certain highlight and you copyright claim it to somebody and then you go on their page, and I never even heard of this organization, I'm not even going to rant about them. But if you copyright claim it to somebody that the highlight doesn't even belong to them, that's where I get frustrated. That's where I get pissed off. Luckily, we didn't do it last week because I would have had a much bigger rant. But today, I'm calm, cool, collected. I got a puppy. Okay. YouTube can't copyright claim my dog, so they can go fuck themselves. But what we're here to talk about. Later on tonight, we'll talk about the Big 12 conference, but right now, we're here to talk about the American Athletic Conference. Now, this has teams that moved out of the conference to go to the Big 12. UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. Now they're going to be joining with the Big 12. And you're bringing in these new teams from the Conference USA, and here's the teams that are coming in. University of Alabama, Birmingham, which is UAB. Go Blazers. UNC, or University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Go Miners. Or 49ers, or whatever they're. Yeah, they're the 49ers. But Florida Atlantic University, FAU Owls. That's an interesting pickup for the American Conference. And then you have the North Texas Mean Green. Used to be called Eagles, but now they're the Mean Green for as long as I've lived, I believe. I think that's a big pickup for the American Conference, especially for a program like North Texas out of Denton, Texas, coming up in football. And then you have Rice Owls. They're on and off, inconsistent with football, more leaning towards the losing side of things. And then we have the 2022 Conference USA champs, the UTSA Roadrunners, joining the American Conference. This is going to be an interesting year of football for the American Conference. And I'm really excited to talk about the American Conference. But we're going to start off with one team that's just coming into the conference, one of the 6 teams that's moving into the conference. I'm talking about the Charlotte 49ers. Okay, so let's roll the footage on Charlotte, and let's take a look at their schedule here. Now, their first game, they're going to play a FCS school, Charlotte, or South Carolina State at home. So that should be an easy dub right off the mark for Charlotte. And then they'll be traveling to Maryland. I think this is going to be a tough test for Charlotte. Talia Tagovailoa is coming back for Maryland, so yeah, I don't consider this a dub at all. And then you have Georgia State on the 16th at home. That could be an interesting game. But I still have my doubts about Charlotte against Georgia State. And then they travel to Florida, and then they travel to SMU. First to the Swamp on the 23rd. Now, Florida doesn't have a Anthony Richardson anymore, so we don't know who their starting quarterback is at this point. But it's Florida. You got to expect that Florida is going to steamroll this team. And then they're going to be traveling to SMU for their American Conference debut. SMU's good. They're going to obliterate this team. I'm sorry, they really are. They're playing at SMU, so I definitely think they're going to be a steamrolling team. And then they take a bye week, and then they're playing in October 14th against Navy. Anchors away. Then October 21st, they travel to East Carolina. And then on October 27th, after a 6-day stretch, they'll be taking on Florida Atlantic. Tough schedule already for Charlotte. And then they travel to Tulsa. That's gonna be a little bit of trouble over there for Charlotte. And then after that game on the November the 4th or November the 11th, they will be playing against Memphis at home. Then they'll play against Rice on the 18th, and then they have an 8-game stretch, which will help them against Southern Florida to finish off the season. Now, what's my ceiling for them? I have them at a 6-6, 4-4 conference record for their first season. They could have a potentially good season for them being who they were. Last season, they were in the 2022 season, they were 3-9 and 2-6 in the Conference USA. So I don't really expect much for them. And they just got a new coach, Biff Poggi, which this is his first season as the 49ers new head coach. The floor. I think the floor is 1-11, no conference wins. I think they'll have a lot of trouble this season. So my floor for them is 1-11. But my prediction here, 2-10 with a 1-7 record. 1-7 for who? Honestly, I think they'll give FAU some trouble at home. But I doubt it. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But I don't think they're going to beat Maryland at Maryland. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia State at home. I don't think they're going to beat Florida. I doubt they're going to beat SMU. So this is just one of the teams that I really do think is going to have a lot of trouble this season. But this next team, they have been in the American Conference for quite some time now. Go ahead and move on to East Carolina. East Carolina now. Head coach is Mike Houston. He's 22-24 overall in his 5th season with the Pirates. Their 2022 record was 8-5 and 4-4. So not a bad record for the American Conference for East Carolina, especially with UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston last season. Now they're leaving, so you have a better shot of having a better record. But look at this schedule here. Their first game is at the Big House. Michigan Wolverines. Jesus criminy. Oh my God. You got Blake Corum coming back. You have Donovan Edwards. You have JJ McCarthy coming back. This defense is coming back. The offense is reloading. I mean, Michigan is primed to be a playoff contender yet again. But East Carolina is going to have a lot of trouble with Michigan. And then they take on Marshall at home on the 9th. But after that, they travel to Boone, North Carolina, where this team last season, A&M fans hate this team for a reason. They will be traveling to Boone, North Carolina to take on Appalachian State. This team is a very underrated team. And if you haven't learned from Michigan, if you haven't learned from fucking Texas A&M last season, this team will play to your level or better. And North Carolina almost fell into that trap last season. So East Carolina, y'all might have some trouble against Appalachian State. And then they have an easier opponent, Gardner-Webb, on the 23rd. And then to finish off September, they travel to Rice as they start their American Athletic Conference matchups. And then they have a 2-game home stretch against SMU and North Carolina Charlotte. And it's a nine-day stretch, so this is going to be beneficial for the Pirates, I think. Could potentially beat SMU, could potentially beat Charlotte after a bye week. Yeah, so they have a bye week after the Rice game, and then they play SMU on the 12th of October, and then they play on Saturday, the 21st, against Charlotte. So odds are on the favor for East Carolina. They could potentially be 4-2 at this point of the season. And then they travel to UTSA in San Antonio, Texas. I might even go to a Roadrunners game this season just to see how well they play. And Frank Harris, he's coming back. Jeff Traylor, he's an awesome coach. I kept up with him since his days in high school football down here in Texas. I mean, the guy can fucking coach and he can recruit. So East Carolina, good luck. don't underestimate the Roadrunners. And then start of November 4th, they'll be facing Tulane, and then they'll have a back-to-back away games. On the 11th, they'll be traveling to Florida or Fort Lauderdale to take on the Florida Atlantic Owls, and then they'll be traveling up to Navy, Annapolis, to take on the Navy Midshipmen. Anchors away. Hopefully, mine and my producers midshipmen can get shit done this year. And then November 25th, they'll be finishing off their season against Tulsa. So I like what I see out of this schedule for ECU, but it is a very, very tricky schedule. And you'll see why here in a minute. So my ceiling for East Carolina, 9-3 with a 6-2 record. Who are they going to lose to, in my opinion? I think they'll lose to UTSA, and they'll lose to Tulane at home. I think Tulane's going to be strong this season. I really think they're going to be good. So is UTSA. I think UTSA and Tulane might possibly play in the championship this year, but we'll see later on in the season. But yeah, the floor though is 5-7 with a 4-4 conference record. Why do I say 5-7? It's pretty obvious. We have some trick games with Appalachian State, Rice, UTSA, SMU at home, Tulane, and FAU with Tom Herman, his first season back, and they just got Casey Thompson from Texas and Nebraska. And then Tulsa might be something to talk about this year too. But 5-7, 4-4 is my floor for them. And my prediction, I think they're going to go 7-5. Reason being, at Michigan, that's a no-brainer. They're going to have trouble against Appalachian State. SMU will give them trouble. UTSA will give them trouble. And Tulane. That's my 5 losses. And that's 3 conference losses right there. So, East Carolina fans, I hope that East Carolina plays well this season, because you got some really tricky scheduling here. You have very beneficial scheduling, but very tricky. But this next team, they just hired this new head coach. I just got done talking about this team. The Florida Atlantic University Owls. Now, these guys, they went 5-7 last year, 4-4 in the Conference USA. They just hired Tom Herman, who was a Texas head coach who I had mixed feelings about at Texas. I liked him, but then I didn't like him at Texas. I didn't like the behind scenes of what happened at Texas. And then he became the Chicago Bears offensive analyst or whatnot. So that's a pretty big step up from being a college football coach to being an NFL offensive analyst. But if you're coaching at the University of Texas, you're expected a lot of things to happen, like to turn a fucking 6-7, 5-7 record to a national championship type of expectation. That's how it is at Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, a lot of schools, LSU, Oklahoma, USC. I could name a bunch of blue bloods right now. I really could. And I can even name a lot of non-blue bloods that expect that, So Florida Atlantic hired a really good coach. I really do think he's a really decent coach. I do think that it will be a rough first year, because you still have to grasp what you have from last season, which is going to be a little rough. And also, you're going into a tougher conference than the Conference USA. Let's be honest. So their schedule is starting off okay-ish. I would say in the first two games at home, where they'll take on Monmouth. Monmouth. I don't even know where the hell that's at, to be honest, which is kind of sad. What the fuck? Monmouth. And then Ohio. They'll be playing at home against Ohio. So this is going to be a weird game. I think Ohio's going to be a better team. I think Ohio's going to be a good team. And then they'll have a 2-game stretch against Power 5 schools. On September 15th, they'll be taking on Clemson at Death Valley. God almighty damn. And then they'll be traveling to Illinois on the 23rd. So there's a good chance y'all might be 1-3. And then they'll have a bye week. And then they'll have their first American Conference game against Tulsa, which that's a tricky game right there at home. Then they'll travel to South Florida, which I really do think they're trying to make a South Florida versus FAU rivalry, which they're not even primary rivals. So I don't know what the conference logic's going here, but so after they get done traveling to Tampa, they'll be traveling back home to take on UTSA at Fort Lauderdale. I don't think they're going to beat UTSA. I think UTSA is one of the tougher teams in the American Conference right now. And then they'll have a 2-game away stretch where they'll be traveling to Charlotte, which I think that could be an easy win. And then they'll travel to Alabama, Birmingham to take on the Blazers of UAB November 4th. And then November 11th, they'll be facing East Carolina at home and Tulane at home on 11 the 18th. And then they finish off the season at Rice. Okay. Jeez Louise, man. That is... fuck around. So there's a good chance that y'all may not have a good season. And y'all have had bad seasons in the last several years, probably the past decade. But Tom Herman's first year, he's got a handful. At Clemson, at Illinois, definite losses. Versus Ohio, who's a very tough Mid-American Conference team. This could easily go 1-3. And then you got to play against Tulsa, at South Florida, UTSA, and Charlotte. That could very easily be 2-6 already. But let's go ahead and talk about my ceiling. My ceiling, what I expect for my ceiling for them to be is 7-5 with a 5-3 record. So I think they'll have trouble with Ohio, but is that a winnable game? I think so. It's not Ohio State. It's not It's not Ohio State. At Clemson, at Illinois, that's a definite loss. So 2-2 right there, right? And then they take on Tulsa at home after a bye week. I think they can win that. At South Florida, I think they can win that. Against UTSA at home, no. So you're already at I want to say 4-3 right now. All right, Charlotte win. UAB, that's a possible loss, but I gave them the nod. I believe I did. I don't have the notes that I had. I just have the schedules and my ceiling and floor. East Carolina, I think they might lose that game. Tulane, I think they will lose that game. So the definite losses are UTSA and Tulane. However, the third loss, I don't know. It could be in between UAB at UAB or against East Carolina, because I think East Carolina's probably going to be a good football team this season. And then they travel to Rice, which I think they'll win that one. The floor, 5-7. 5-7. 4-4 record. So I think on this one they are going to lose to Ohio, and then UAB, East Carolina, Tulane, and UTSA. That'd be your 4 conference losses, and that's 3 conference losses at home. So that's tough. But my prediction is going to be a 4-8, 3-5. So I am going to go below the floor here. I'm going to be 6 feet under on this one. 4-8 with a 3-5 conference record. I think they're going to lose at USF. I don't know why. I just have this gut feeling that USF's going to beat them at home. If it's because it's at Raymond James Stadium, I don't know. But I have them losing at home or at USF. And then also, obviously, losing to Clemson and Illinois, losing to Ohio, UAB, UTSA, Tulane, East Carolina. So there you have it. FAU fans, don't be mad at me. I picked y'all to lose underneath the floor. So hopefully Tom Herman turns this thing around his first season to where they are competitive. Next team we're going to talk about is a team that has been to the American Conference Championship before. This team, they have a really good coach right here. Ryan Silverfield, his 4th season at Memphis, they went 7-6 with a 3-5 conference record. Pretty low standard for Memphis. When me and JMO were in the Navy, they were running roughshod all over the American Conference. But they would always meet up with the UCF, and that rivalry was just intense. But Ryan Silverfield, he's 21 for 16, and man, yeah, check out this throwback right here. The Memphis State University logo. Look at that. God damn, I got a good producer because he knows I love throwbacks. But listen, Memphis has a real good shot at being in the conversation of the American Conference Championship. But they have some they have a pretty decent schedule. But they'll start off the season against Bethune-Cookman. And the reason why I call them Bethune-Cookman, because they fired Ed Reed after he was trying to take care of the kids, trying to take care of the program. Fuck Bethune-Cookman. But anyway, they take on Bethune-Cookman, the first game of the season, on September the 2nd. And then they'll be traveling to Jonesboro, Arkansas to take on Arkansas State on the 9th. And then they have a home game against Navy five days later. Holy shit. That could be troublesome. September 14th at Navy. And then they have a 9-game stretch to take on Missouri, which a lot of people are saying this could be a trap game for Missouri, which I have to agree. And then 7 days later, on the 30th, we got Boise State. Now, Boise State's also going to play against UCF at home, but they're traveling to Memphis this year to take on the Tigers, and that's going to be a fun game to watch. And then they have a bye week, and they take on the American Conference champions / Cotton Bowl champions who beat USC last year, the Tulane Green Wave, October 13th. And then they have a 2-game road game stretch on the 21st and 28th. On the 21st, they'll travel to Alabama, Birmingham to take on the UAB Blazers. And then they will travel to North Texas to take on the Mean Green on the 28th. Very interesting schedule here. And then November 4th, they'll be back home against South Florida. And then they'll travel to Charlotte to take on the 49ers. Then they'll have their last home game against SMU. Very interesting game here. And then they'll play at Temple 6 days later after Senior Day. I like Memphis. I like their football team. I like their program. Memphis is one of my underrated favorite teams. I have like a tier list of teams I love. My favorite teams, well, really, there's only one favorite team, and that's the University of Texas. But my favorite teams to watch, my favorite teams to go over, Memphis is one of those. Memphis is one of those teams that I love to watch and love to go over. Now, with that being said, the verdict is in. Ceiling, floor, and my prediction. The ceiling, I could have them at a 9-3, 6-2 conference record. The games that they will lose non-conference wise will in fact be Boise State. I think Boise State will be a formidable opponent against them. I think they'll have trouble against Boise State at home. On my ceiling, I have them beating Missouri. So that's a very bold statement. An SEC school taking on an American conference. Well, take you back to a couple of years ago. Memphis was written off as this team that couldn't beat Ole Miss. And they completely beat the shit out of Ole Miss. Not the scoreboard didn't say otherwise, but the yardage and all that said so. And Memphis went from a team that was being written off to competing in the American Conference Championship to competing in New Year's Six Bowls against Penn State. I will never ever underestimate Memphis. But 9-3, 6-2 for me. The teams that I think are going to give them a lot of trouble this season will be Tulane and SMU. I think SMU is going to be a lot better this season. So I have them losing to both teams. My floor, I have them as a 5-7, 4-4 team. Now the 5-7 that comes from losing to Arkansas State, Missouri, and Boise State. So they only win against Bethune-Cookman. And I have them losing to Tulane, SMU, North Texas, and UAB. Why not Navy? I honestly don't know. I think Navy's going to be a little bit weaker than Memphis this season. I'm hoping for the best for Brian Newberry and the midshipmen, but I mean, this Memphis team's going to be tough this season, which is why my prediction is going to be 8-4 for the Tigers with a 5-3 conference record, which I have them losing to Tulane, SMU, and I'm going to go ahead and say UAB on this one. So the Blazers are going to beat Memphis. So that's a pretty bold statement. And I have them as an 8-4 because I really do think they're going to have trouble at Missouri, and they're going to have trouble against Boise State. So they could potentially be 3-2 up until that Tulane point, which would put them at a 3-3, and then UAB puts them at 3-4, or not 3-4. Yeah. So, jeez, what was I saying? Anyway, I'm losing air, but yeah. So there you go, Memphis fans. I hope you enjoy that 8-4 with a 5-3 conference record. I wish y'all the best, just like I wish all the rest of these teams the best. just for the simple fact is I like competition in conference. But next team we're going to talk about is a team that since I first joined the Navy, they have struggled against Army. You know, I used to watch this game against Army from the time I was born. So there'd be 3 teams I'd watch on the television. It'd be Texas, Michigan, and Navy. That's who we're talking about next. The Navy Midshipmen. Their 2022 record was a 4-8 with a 4-4 record, American Conference record. And they hired a new head coach, a new head man finally, Brian Newberry. Hopefully he can turn this program around. He can finally get the midshipmen back to where they belong on top of the American Conference. That's if they don't try to go into the independents, because we all know conference realignment is just blowing everybody's heads off, apparently. But, all right, so let's talk about this game right here. This is a rivalry game. The Fighting Irish Navy. August 26th. Both teams are going to be traveling to Dublin, Ireland. I fucking love the Irish. Okay, I'm not talking about Notre Dame. I'm talking about actual Irishmen. And one thing they will fucking tell you. Oh, I love the fucking Irish. Okay, good for you. Yeah. And they usually say fuck the Trojans or whoever I talk about. It's Notre Dame all the way. And they're very proud of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, which they should be. They've had very good teams, and I really do think this is going to be a Notre Dame team to be reckoned with this season. But here we go. They will be traveling to Dublin, Ireland to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the Navy Midshipmen. I don't know how well they're going to do. I honestly think it might be a blowout. And then they come back to mainland or stateside for my military folk, September 9th to take on Wagner, which that should be a dub. And then they'll have a 5. This is where I have trouble with Navy right here. They all have a 5-day stretch to take on Memphis. So I really don't think that Navy will have the capability to beat Memphis at Memphis. So this will be tough for them. And then they'll have a 2 home game stretch against South Florida and North Texas. The 30th taking on South Florida, and then the 7th taking on North Texas. And then they'll be traveling to Charlotte October 14th. And then they'll play at home against the Chair Force, which they have an outstanding offense. Air Force. I really do think this is going to be a tough game for Navy on the 21st of October. But November 4th, they'll be traveling to Temple, and then they'll have a 2-game home stretch between them and UAB, and then they'll take on East Carolina, and then on the 25th, they'll travel to SMU. Now, what's not on the schedule on here, which we already know, because this is a college football tradition, Army versus Navy. This is going to be a game that I fucking watch it every year. Last season was a drag, but Navy needs to pull their shit together against Army. That's all I got. Fuck me, dude. But let's go to our ceiling, our floor, and my prediction for Navy. Now here we go. The ceiling and the floor gap is like wide open. it's probably longer than the Grand Canyon. So yeah. So my ceiling for them is an 8-4 with a 6-2 conference record. So I see a lot of good out of this new head coach, Brian Newberry, coming in. And then where I start to go, what the fuck are we doing with Navy? Like, my head's like this with this schedule. I'm looking at a 3-9 with a 2-6 conference record. So the floor is worse than 2022, but my prediction is going to be 5-7 with a 3-5 conference record. Only beating Charlotte, South Florida, and possibly Temple. This schedule's way too rough for Navy. Notre Dame, Memphis, after a 5-game stretch against Wagner. Air Force, Army. I mean, you name it, dude. Like, it is very tough to say that Navy's going to go over 500 this season. I don't think so. But I hope my midshipmen can get things going. Hopefully they can get their heads out of their ass, because at the simple fact of the video that I think my midshipmen will start to show glimpses of normality in Navy midshipmen and bring back the glory of anchors away. Okay, that's enough for me and Navy rant, but I wish them the best. Now here's a new team coming into the conference. They're coming from the Conference USA. They just hired a new head coach, so we have a lot of new hires for this conference, by the way. This team is North Texas. Eric Morris, his first season with the Mean Green. They're coming off of a 7-7 with a 6-2 conference record. So they weren't very strong non-conference, but they were very strong in the Conference USA. They had a lot of trouble with UTSA when UTSA was with them in the Conference USA. So, all right. So let's talk about North Texas, the Mean Green. They will be hosting. So this is a trap game for any predictor out there. This is a trap game. On September 2nd, they will be hosting California, the Golden Bears, at Denton, Texas. This is going to be a very interesting game for me to pick, because California is known as of late to be a piling, steaming bag of dog shit. No offense, Billy. Then they will have 2 straight road games. September 9th at Florida International, and then they'll travel to Louisiana Tech on the 16th, and then they'll have a bye week. And then on the 30th, they will face Abilene Christian University. And then starting October 7th, they will debut in the American Conference to take on Navy at Navy. So that's another tricky game for them. And then they'll take on Temple at home, travel to Tulane. That's going to be tough. But they have 2 straight home games against Memphis and UTSA, October 28th and November 4th. So that's going to be good for them. And then November 10th and November 18th, they'll be traveling to SMU and Tulsa. Now, SMU, the stretch between SMU and Tulsa, I like that stretch for North Texas. I think it's going to be beneficial for them, but we'll see. And then they have their last game against University of Alabama, Birmingham. Go Blazers. November 25th. So I like the scheduling for North Texas. I don't think it hurts them at all. I think it's more beneficial for them to travel to Tulane, that's probably their toughest game this year, is traveling to Tulane. So here's my ceiling, floor, and prediction. Okay. So ceiling, I have them at a 9-3 with a 5-3 conference record. Why 5-3? I think they'll have trouble with Tulane, obvious reasons. UTSA, and they'll have trouble at SMU. That's my automatic 3 losses right there in the conference. I think they'll lose those conference games. Now 9-3, I think they're gonna win all of their non-conference games this season. In my ceiling, this ain't my prediction, but as far as my ceiling, I have them winning all of their conference games. Now let's take a look at the floor. 5-7 with a 3-5 record. I think they'll in this iteration, I think they'll beat FIU. I do think they'll beat Abilene Christian, but I don't think they'll beat California and Louisiana Tech. And then they travel to Navy, lose to Tulane, lose to UTSA, SMU, UAB. So I'm pretty sure that was 5-7. But my prediction though is 6-6 with a 5-3 record. So pretty much the same thing as the ceiling, but I think they'll lose to Cal. I think they'll start off with an 0-3 record to begin with. But I really do think that North Texas has some really good talent. I mean, they did lose a wide receiver to Auburn in the transfer portal, so we'll see what happens with North Texas. I hope the Mean Green up in Denton, Texas, does some work. But on to the next team. This team made it to a bowl game somehow. I don't know who they paid off to be in a bowl game last season. They were below 500. They did not belong. A&M fans were pissed off. I was laughing at A&M fans because of this. But the Rice Owls, they have a 6-year head man, Mike Bloomgreen. His overall record is not a good overall record. 16-39 at Rice since he's been the head man over there. But last season they went 5-8 with a 3-5 conference record. Oh man, if you look at their schedule right now, that first game the first 2 games that they have, oh my bejesus. They take on my Longhorns week 1 at the 40 acres. They're probably going to get their asses creamed 60-3 or something like that. That's just a given. I mean, look what happened last time they played against Rice, or Rice played against Texas. Rice got their asses kicked by Texas. So then they play against the rivals, Houston, a brand new Big 12 team. I think they'll lose to them. And then they have an easier schedule after that with Texas Southern, but they travel to South Florida. So that could be very well easily be a 1-3, a fucking 1-3 start. And then they take on East Carolina and UConn at home. They travel to Tulsa. They play at home against Tulane. That's probably the smart move right there. Play at Tulsa and then Tulane at home. They'll play at home against their other rivals, SMU. But they have a 2-game stretch on the road against UTSA and Charlotte. And they'll cap off the season against the other Owls, the Florida Atlantic Owls, the Owl Bowl. Good God. So many similar teams these days. But anyway, here's my ceiling, here's my floor, here's my final prediction for Rice. 8-4 with a 5-3 record. Obviously, they're going to lose to Texas. They're obviously going to lose to Houston. But, or actually, no, I have them actually beating Houston. So they'll beat Houston, they'll beat Texas Southern, and they'll beat UConn. And the three teams they're going to lose to is Tulane, UTSA, and SMU. That trio right there, they will have trouble against those teams. That is a given fact. My floor, 4-8 with a 3-5 record. Do I need to explain this shit for Rice? Like, come on. This is probably the most realistic floor that I have on here. 4-8 with a 3-5 record. Yeah, I don't see them beating Texas this season. I think Texas is probably going to be a contender for the playoff this season. Definitely a contender in the Big 12 championship. But we'll talk about that later. We will talk about that later tonight at 8:30. Tune in for that one. And then the other two teams I think they'll lose to is East Carolina and South Florida, or FAU. I forget which one I put. But my final prediction is 3-9 and 2-6 for the Rice Owls. So again, I went below the floor because I don't think they're going to do that well this season. And this might be Mike Bloomgreen's last season as the Rice Owls head coach. I think they're only going to beat Charlotte and possibly FAU, possibly South Florida. I don't know. I don't see them being that good this season, especially in the American Conference. If they stayed in the Conference USA, sure, they might be good next season. But who knows? Who knows? But moving on to a team that had Sonny Dykes. They were betrayed by Sonny Dykes, as they say, to TCU. And then they ended up playing against Sonny Dykes in a very good game, in my opinion. The SMU Mustangs, the only team in college football history to ever receive the death penalty in 1984. In 2022, they went 7-6 with a 5-3 record in the American Conference. Now, they have a second-year head man, Rhett Lashley. He's 7-6 overall right now. Give him some time, Mustang fans. I think he's going to do well for you guys. All right, here's the problem that I have. They have a fucking tough schedule. They have to play against Louisiana Tech. That might be an easy game for them. But then they have to go to Norman, Oklahoma to face the Village Idiots over in Oklahoma University to take on the Sooners. They'll have an easy win against Prairie View A&M, but they have to travel to Fort Worth to face the runner-ups for the Big 12 Championship and the National Championship. The Cinderella team known as TCU Horned Frogs with Max Duggan. Me and Caleb usually talk about Max Duggan a lot, but I think this will be a fun game to watch again at Fort Worth. So, SMU fans, I fucking love your team. And then they'll play against Charlotte in the American Conference match, first American Conference match of the season, September 30th. And then they have two back-to-back road games against East Carolina and Temple. Temple's going to be a tricky game because Lincoln Financial Stadium, you know how Philly fans are. They are crazy. And then they have 8 days later, they'll take on Tulsa at home. So that's beneficial. And then they'll travel to Rice to take on the Owls. And then they'll take on North Texas, the Mean Green. And then they'll have their last road game against Memphis. And then they'll have their last home game of the season, senior night, senior day, whatever, against our Navy midshipmen. And I say our because JMO is on with me. He's just producing and he's doing a damn good job of it, by the way. But anyway, hey, what you barking at, silly? That's the TV. All right, so my ceiling, my floor for SMU. My ceiling is 11-1 with an 8-0 record. Now, who's the lucky team that loses from the Big 12 to SMU? I'm going to say Oklahoma. They're my ceiling. The reason why I have Oklahoma losing to SMU on the ceiling and SMU having a spectacular year for the ceiling is the simple fact that Oklahoma is not going to be as good as they once were with Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley. And these Oklahoma fans need to understand that. These media guys are trying to trick Oklahoma fans. I know this because I'm a Longhorn fan. Don't drink the fucking Kool-Aid, Oklahoma. Don't drink the fucking Kool-Aid. But I do have them losing to TCU. But what I find interesting about their schedule, they don't have Tulane. They don't have UTSA on them. So that helps them out a lot with this schedule. But my floor, 6-6, 4-4 conference record. I think there's gonna be a lot of teams that come out with a surprise, like East Carolina, like I said earlier, North Texas, Memphis, and possibly, hypothetically, Navy. I don't know, Tulsa, Temple. Temple is going to be a tough home game or away game, so it might be Temple in realistic aspects over Navy. But my prediction is going to be 8-4 with a 6-2 conference record. The only two teams they're going to lose to, in my opinion, in the conference will be East Carolina and Memphis, both road games. So, SMU fans, I would much rather see y'all go 11-1 and undefeated in the conference. But do I really think y'all are going undefeated in the conference? I don't think so. I really don't think so. But on to the next team. JMO, we have a guy who just got hired on. This is so similar. This guy just got hired on to a team that was complete fucking disaster last season. 1-11, 0-8. Yes, UCF fans. Yes, South Florida fans. I am talking about the South Florida Bulls. Now, these guys have been absolute dog shit ever since Quentin Flowers left. I mean, they had that one magical year against UCF where they went fucking bananas in that thriller back in 2017. But, man, I tell you what, USF might be one of the worst teams to take on this fucking podcast. 1-11, 0-8 last season. And they start off with a banger at Western Kentucky, so that's gonna be a pretty interesting matchup right there. And then they'll be at home for the first time, taking on Florida A&M. Okay, that's not a bad thing. Well, then the following week they have a home game against the motherfucking Alabama Crimson Tide, which they might have a sour taste after losing to the University of Texas. Which I'll give my prediction on that game later on tonight on the Big 12 Conference, which will be live 8:30 tonight. My time, anyway. He goes by 6:30. I go by 8:30. So, yeah, Alabama at home, and then they face off against Rice. So, the positive thing is they could easily go with a 3-1 or a 2-2 start. However, Western Kentucky's a pretty good team. I don't know how good Florida A&M is, but there's rumblings that they could be a team that pulls off an upset. Rice, they went 5-8 last season, so I don't know, but definitely not beating Alabama. Surely not. Surely not. I know they have quarterback troubles, but really, Alabama fans, you're gonna cry about a quarterback controversy and receivers dropping passes in the spring? Who gives a fuck about a spring game? Let's be honest here. So after they play against Rice on the 23rd, they have actually 2 games on the road against Navy and UAB. Then they play at home against FAU. Then they travel to UConn to take on the Huskies, which I think they should have been in the American Conference. I don't know why they're independent. But there's rumblings about them joining the Big 12. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about conference realignment once we're done with this. And then the November stretch. They have a road game, home game, road game, home game. They'll be traveling to Memphis on the 4th. On the 11th, they'll play against Temple at home. Then the last road game will be against UT San Antonio. Rough. For those that have been to that stadium in San Antonio, the traffic is horrible. But I love the environment. I love the environment in the Alamo Dome. So, South Florida fans, good luck. And then the last game, the senior day, senior night, whatever the fuck you want to call it, they'll be taking on Charlotte. Now, here is my ceiling, floor, and predictions for this season for the South Florida Bulls. Now, I could very easily say they could go 7-5 here. That's my ceiling. 7-5 with a 5-3 conference record. Losing to UTSA, Memphis, and UAB. The non-conference losses will be Alabama and Western Kentucky, or possibly UConn. So 7-5, but my floor is a 2-10. 2-10 with a 1-7 conference. That is shit. That's probably the worst one. I haven't really seen the rest of them yet. I know I wrote them down, but I typically forget. But 2-10 with a 1-7 conference record. Jesus Christ. Yeah. 1-7. Who are they gonna beat? Who else are they gonna beat? Fucking Charlotte. Woo! Charlotte. But my actual prediction will be a 4-8 with a 3-5 conference record. I think this is a fair prediction, and I think South Florida fans will appreciate me for putting 4-8 instead of 0-12 or 1-11 or maybe 2-10. But yeah, I just don't see South Florida doing that well this season. I really don't, especially with traveling to Western Kentucky, then playing Alabama at home, UAB on the road, Navy on the road, UConn on the road, Memphis on the road, UTSA on the road, and possibly have trouble with Temple. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Since we got a hold of South Florida, the next team will be, you guessed it, Temple. Now, the Temple out. How many fucking teams have the same fucking mascot? Fucking Owls. Temple Owls. Florida Atlantic Owls. Rice Owls. fucking owls everywhere. It's like a fucking Jesus Christ. But yeah, no kidding. So the Temple Owls, they went 3-9 last season with a 1-7 conference record with their first year head man Stan Drayton, who was a running back coach for Texas. So I think they'll have a better season. How much better? I don't know. I don't know. This is their second season with Stan Drayton. Hopefully they do well. But starting off, they have Akron, and then they travel over to Rutgers. But on my NCAA 14, Rutgers is ranked 5th in the country somehow, even though we all know Rutgers is dog shit. And then they play against Norfolk State at home, which we know, me and JMO know a little bit about Norfolk State a little bit. They could be a rough team to play against. Miami, Florida, the U. They play against the U at home. So I think Miami's going to have a good season. Like I said on the last podcast, I think they're going to have a really good season. So Temple's going to have trouble with them. And then they have their first conference game against Tulsa at Tulsa. And then on the 7th of October, they travel to UTSA to take on the Roadrunners. Then they travel to Denton, Texas to take on North Texas. 6 days later, they play at Lincoln Financial Stadium to take on SMU. Then the November stretch, they have one home game, then 2 straight away games, and one last home game. And they'll take on Navy the 4th. They'll travel to South Florida on November 11th. November 18th, they'll travel to Alabama, Birmingham. And November 25th, they will be at home for senior day night. I don't give a fuck. For Memphis. So, my ceiling, floor, and predictions. This is going to be interesting. My ceiling is 8-4 with a 5-3 record. They have a pretty easy non-conference schedule. And it's sad to say because Rutgers is very, 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 very awful. I don't think any Rutgers fan. I don't think Rutgers fans would argue with me. They would honestly agree with me on that one. So they could potentially go 3-1, losing to Miami, and then they'll take on. They'll have a 5-3 conference record, which losing to UTSA, SMU, and possibly Memphis. So yeah, I really do think they're gonna have a little bit of trouble here. What is it? Yeah, but okay. So my floor now is 3-9. 3-9 with a 1-7 record. Pretty much the same record as last season. I don't think I need to explain how I feel about my floor about Temple. I think it says about as enough. Probably my prediction makes more sense. Anyway, so I'm gonna go with a 4-8 and 2-6 conference record. So I have them beating South Florida and Tulsa. Both on the road, by the way. So no conference wins at home. And the only 2 games they'll win non-conference is Norfolk State and Akron. So holy fuck. That is tough shit. Now, we're going to talk about another team. The next team we're going to talk about is a team that took the American Conference last season. They became the conference champions, beating UCF. Pretty much just telling UCF, See you later. Not. You're going to the Big 12, losers. And going into the Cotton Bowl, getting a New Year's Six Bowl victory over a team that was thought to be a really good team in USC. I'm talking about the Tulane Green Wave. The Tulane Green Wave. Willie Fritz in his 8th season. That's the longest tenure in the American Conference. Willie Fritz has a 4-3 and 45 or 43 and 45 overall record in Tulane. This is going to be a team that everybody's going to be watching out for in the American Conference. Possibly a conference champion, possibly one of the teams that makes it back to the conference or to the New Year's Six Bowl. USC fans, beware, because Tulane, the Green Wave's coming at you. I definitely don't see a drop off for Tulane this season, especially with the schedule that they have here. The only team that I could see they have trouble with is Ole Miss, but they're playing at home. So here we go. On the 2nd, they'll take on South Alabama at home, and then they have a big game at home against Ole Miss. Then the 16th, they'll travel to Southern Miss to take on the Golden Eagles. Then they'll play at home against Nicholls State. So that's a 3-game. That's 3 out of 4 games that are on at home. And then to end September, they have 4 home games out of 5 at home. So that favors the fortune right there. They'll start their conference game against UAB on the 30th. Then they'll travel to Memphis after a bye week on the 13th. That's going to be an interesting game. On the 21st, they'll play against North Texas. On the 28th, they'll take on Rice. And then starting November 4th, they'll travel to East Carolina. November 11th, they'll take on Tulsa. November 18th, they will travel to Fort Lauderdale to take on the Florida Atlantic Owls. And then their last game is a very tough game, and possibly a rematch will happen, in my opinion. November 25th, they take on the UTSA Roadrunners. All right, let's talk about Tulane here. I think this is going to be a fun schedule for them. And my ceiling for them, get ready, because it's a fucking crazy ceiling for this team. Very controversial, if you ask me. Ole Miss fans are going to hate me for saying this, but my ceiling for Tulane is 12-0 with an 8-0, 12-0 with an 8-0 conference record. I think they're bringing back their quarterback Michael Pratt. I think he's a good quality quarterback. And this Tulane team plays with a grit that I have seen in a small team before, or a small program like this that I've seen before. Tulane is one of those teams you got to watch out for, because this team will hurt you. And they proved it against USC. Like, you can't count them out at all. You cannot count them out. You could be up 28-3 and not expect a comeback finish from Tulane. Now, my floor for them, though, is a 7-5 floor with a 5-3 conference loss record, or a conference record. Now, I have them in this. I have them losing to both Ole Miss and Southern Miss, traveling to Southern Miss. And then I have them losing to Memphis. I have them losing to ECU. And I have them losing to UTSA. So 7-5, 5-3 record. But here's my actual prediction. I have them at a 9-3 with a 6-2. So my 9-3, that comes from losing to Ole Miss. So I do think Ole Miss is going to scrape by against Tulane. And then the conference losses will be at Memphis and either at ECU or against UTSA. But I really like what Tulane has coming back. I like what they have in the transfer portal. I like what they have in general. So Tulane, they are going to miss Tajay Spears, but I really do like their running back department, and I really do like the receivers. Very physical, very mean. I like what I see out of Tulane. So 9-3, 6-2 is a good prediction for me. Next team we're going to talk about. I guess I used to think, well, I still think they're rivals with Tulane. They haven't been really relevant since the early 2000s or late 2000s. That'd be the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. They are bringing in a new head man, Kevin Wilson. I just don't know about this Tulsa team yet, like with Kevin Wilson. I know last season they lost some pretty close games. It's hard for me to say that they're good, but it's hard for me to say that they're bad. Tulsa went 5-7 last season with a 3-5 conference record. I used to like Tulsa, like they would compete with Oklahoma. That's how good they were. Now they're like, I don't know. I don't know anymore, but they do have a fucked up schedule. I was about to say a decent schedule until I saw at Washington and Oklahoma. Oh, fuck. All right, here we go. I forgot that this was going to happen. So they will be playing against Arkansas Pine Bluff week 1. Week 2, they will play at Washington. Washington's projected to be a playoff contender this season. Then they'll play against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they'll struggle this season, but I don't think they'll be as bad as last season. So count that game out for Tulsa as well. Northern Illinois, at Northern Illinois. I don't know. I'll look more into Northern Illinois, but I do think that Tulsa might have the edge over Northern Illinois, but we'll see. But now we start the conference play with Temple. Then they'll travel to FAU. They'll play against Rice at home, travel to SMU. So they got the pattern here. Home, away, home, away. I like that. And in between FAU and Rice, they have a 12-game stretch, so that's going to help them out a lot. So after Rice, they'll travel to SMU, and then on the 4th, they'll take on Charlotte at home, and then they'll travel to Tulane November 11th. Then they'll play at home senior day, senior night. I don't give a fuck. Against North Texas, and then they'll cap off the season at East Carolina. Now, Kevin Wilson's going in just like what Tom Herman's about to get into. It's either going to be a jump season or a fucking shit show of a season. But let's see what I have. Tulsa. The ceiling, I got them at an 8-4 with a 6-2 conference record. Both losing to Washington and Oklahoma. Their 2 losses, though, would be SMU and Tulane. I think SMU and Tulane are too much to handle, especially on the road against them. No way that Tulsa beats them. Now, my floor is a 4-8, 2-6 conference record. Only winning against possibly Temple and FAU. Or actually, no, I'm wrong. FAU and Charlotte. And still beating Northern Illinois and Arkansas Pine Bluff. They're good enough to have a 2-2 non-conference schedule. But my prediction is going to be a 6-6 and 4-4 record. They'll have a 2-2 record, non-conference. So they're going to be 500 across the fucking board here. 2-2 non-conference, 4-4 conference, 6-6 overall. I have them losing to SMU, Tulane, East Carolina, and I think they'll have a shocker loss to Temple. But I think they'll have a shocker win against North Texas. So we'll see what happens with that. But I wish Tulsa would just go back to the days that they were good and competitive with Power 5 schools. But I just don't see that happening this season. Now we're down to our final two teams that are now new members of the American Conference. That was the last founding father of the American Conference, by the way, Tulsa. But now we're jumping in here to a team that was pretty good last season. They were 500 in the Conference USA. A team that you got to watch out for this season, in my opinion. They have a new head man, Trent Dilfer, former Super Bowl quarterback MVP for the Baltimore Ravens. Trent Dilfer is the new head coach for the University of Alabama, Birmingham, the UAB Blazers. Now, I like this hire for UAB. He brings a very good intensity. He cares about his players, and he wants them to win. Now, UAB is one of those teams that you have to watch out for this season. They are a fucking walking trap game. They are a walking death trap right here. The Blazers now. These guys may have a tough schedule. Non-conference, I don't think it's a really tough schedule, but they have competitive edge with some of these teams, except for the September 23rd one. September 23rd, they'll be taking on the defending national champions. You know, the team that I thought was going to lose to TCU, but ended up dropping 65 hamburgers on TCU. Yeah, that team, Georgia. But let's go ahead and talk about the schedule. North Carolina A&T on August 31st at home. I think this is going to be an easy game for UAB. Then they travel to Georgia Southern. This is going to be a fun game to watch. I really do think this is going to be fun to watch. And then they have a home game against, Louisiana. And Louisiana, they're up there in that tough department too. So this could be a competitive game as well. And then they'll be traveling to Athens, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, the defending national champions, back-to-back national champions, by the way, which they deserve a lot of respect. They really do. I will never doubt them again until they lose a game. Georgia will probably steamroll and take a shit on UAB in this game. I'm just being brutally honest here. Then they travel for their first game at Tulane, the defending American Conference champions. So that's a tough 2-game stretch. And then they play at home against USF October 7th. And then October 14th is a big-time matchup between them and UTSA. UTSA is going to be very good, so I don't expect them to win that game either. October 21st, they'll play at home against Memphis. They'll have a bye week, have another home game against Florida Atlantic. Travel to Navy on November 11th. Go Navy, anchors away. And then they'll have their last game, senior night, senior day. You already know the fucking drill. I don't care. Against Temple and then they travel to Denton, Texas to finish off the season against the North Texas Mean Green. Now, this is probably the biggest gap I've ever had between a ceiling and a floor so far. Because you don't know, this is the exciting part. You don't know what to expect from a team like UAB. Now, my ceiling for them is a 9-3, 6-2 record. 9-3, 6-2 conference record. I think UAB is going to be very tough on teams. Probably the only 3 teams that are going to give them trouble is Tulane, UTSA, and Georgia. That's it, and all those are road games. So having an undefeated record at home is a good thing for UAB. And then my floor, get ready, folks. It's fucking out there. 2-10 with a 1-7 record. So that's a pretty big fucking gap. A seven game stretch gap right there from a 9-3 to the floor at 2-10. You're dealing with a first-year head coach that hasn't really coached a college football game. He's coached high school, but he's never coached a college football game. But he is also a Super Bowl quarterback. He has played in the NFL. He understands playbooks. So then I have my prediction here. I have a 7-5, 5-3 record. I have them losing to Georgia, Louisiana, Tulane, UTSA, and Memphis. So that's a 5. So you're looking at it like this. 5 of those games are early in the season. So they could potentially go on a 4-game win streak in November. They could go undefeated in November. So I like the chances of UAB this season. I really do. 7-5 or higher this season. Last, but certainly not least, a team that is coming in as a conference champion. This team is a team that I really like. I like their head coach. I think he's a brilliant fucking mind. I like this dude very much. And that dude is none other than Jeff Traylor and the UTSA Roadrunners. Now, this guy's coming in his 5th season. Probably the most successful coach out of this entire fucking conference right here. A 30-10 record overall. So, in 40 games, he's won 30 games. So, that's impressive. They went 11-3 with an 8-0 conference record last season. So, it was time for them to jump already. So, UTSA. What can I say? I'm very proud of UTSA from how far they've come. Very young program, too. They started up, I believe, in 2013, 2014, and they're coming up on their 10th year. And he's coached half of their program history. And he's brought success to the Roadrunners. And I am very proud of this program. Now, they don't have a light schedule by no means. They start off at Houston. They had a spectacular game last season against Houston, but they ended up losing to Houston. Or is it the other way around? I don't remember. But all I can remember is it was fucking awesome. It was a very good game, and I knew UTSA was going to be good that year anyway. I considered them a conference champion last season, and I could consider them a conference champion this year. But they travel to Houston, and then they have a 2-game home stretch September 9th. Now, this game is pretty interesting. UTSA taking on Texas State. Now, a lot of people don't look at Texas State as a team that's like up there on UTSA's level. But this game gets pretty fucking competitive real quick. And I think this could be a potentially great game for Texas State and UTSA. Texas State picking up a lot of transfers. This is gonna be a very fun game to watch for UTSA and Texas State to play this season. And then they have another home game against Army, which fuck Army, West Point. After a 6-game stretch, they'll be taking on the Black Knights. So that's already a tough schedule right there. 3 games already tough. And then they travel to Knoxville, Tennessee, take on the Volunteers. Joe Milton and Josh Heupel, the Tennessee Volunteers. They had a fucking tremendous year last season. I don't expect any less out of this Tennessee program this coming up year. Should be an interesting matchup anyway between UTSA and Tennessee. And then they start off their first American Conference game at Temple. So that's going to be tough. And then they'll play at home for their first American Conference home game against UAB at FAU to take on the one of the 3 Owls in the conference, the Florida Atlantic Owls. Jesus Christ. And then play at home against the East Carolina Pirates. Then the November stretch. They'll be at Denton, Texas, take on North Texas. I think they're starting to build a little rivalry here with North Texas and UTSA, which I can respect that. Both programs are starting to become really prolific group of 5 teams. I really do like this rivalry, or sort of rivalry. I don't even know if it's considered a rivalry, but I like to think it is a rivalry. And then they have 2 home games in November. Another 6-game stretch or 6-day stretch for these 2 home games. November 11th at home against Rice. And then November 17th against USF for their final home game of the season. And then they travel to Tulane. So this matchup is going to be star printed, whatever you want to say. It is going to be a good matchup. But enough with the gaga. Let me talk about who's going to win, or what their ceiling is, what their floor, and what their fucking prediction is going to be. My ceiling, I got them 11-1 with a 8-0 record. The only team they'll lose to, you guessed it, Knoxville, Tennessee, the Tennessee Volunteers. And then my floor, 8-4 with a 6-2 conference loss record, or 6-2 conference record, losing to East Carolina and Tulane, possibly UNT. Possibly losing to Houston again at Houston and losing to Tennessee. But my final prediction is going to be 9-3 and 7-1. So they'll only lose to Tulane in conference. Out of conference, I have them losing to Houston and Tennessee. I think Jeff Traylor is going to surprise a lot of people that don't know about TC or UTSA. I was about to say TCU, Jesus Christ. But yeah, so I really do think that UTSA is going to be a team to be reckoned with. They are going to be a very tough offense to defend. They do have some guys that left for the transfer portal, left for the draft, but they got their quarterback still there, Frank Harris. I think he's one of the smartest quarterbacks in college football today. I genuinely believe that. So with that being said, that concludes the American Conference. My God, 12 teams in the American Conference, 14 in the Big 12 now. Later tonight, it'll be 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern time and 6:30 Pacific time, if I'm correct. I don't know times that well, apparently. I think I killed off a bunch of brain cells when I was in the Navy. So anyway, but I really like what the American Conference has, but it looks a lot weaker on paper with Charlotte and some of these other teams that are in the conference. But I genuinely think it's a very competitive conference. But I like what I see out of the American Conference. If you like the American Conference, comment below what you guys feel about the American Conference. What do you like out of the American Conference? What do you want to see out of the American Conference? What's your boldest prediction about the American Conference? My bold prediction is that UAB is going to shock the world, and they're just going to play competitive football. They might be 7-5, but they're going to surprise a lot of teams this year in the American Conference. South Florida, a bold prediction for me. For South Florida, they'll be bowl eligible. FAU, Tom Herman gets into bowl eligibility. I mean, there's so many bold predictions that you could put out for this American Conference because it's wildly competitive. On paper, it doesn't seem like it, but I genuinely think it's going to be very competitive this season. But thank you guys for watching. This has been the PMP American Conference preview of 2023. And we are the greatest podcast on YouTube without getting copyright claimed. We are the PMP. Thank you for watching, and good night. Mwah, and good night. Bang! Take it easy, folks.
Disappear like David Blaine. I'm talking woosah. Fuck the hoopla. I saw what I saw. Fuck what you saw. I've been on my day to day. Disappear like David Blaine.
Therapy wasn't working. I had to find my purpose. Someone tell me what my purpose. Probably somewhere in my Birkin. And Janae say I should put down Perkins. Well, I'm too busy hurting. She know them dance when I'm working. I'm too busy hurting. Woosah. Fuck the hoorah. I saw what I saw. Fuck what you saw. No plan B. They know I give it to them too raw. My mama say I should get a piece of mine, probably in Utah. My granny say his demons on me. I know them demons on me. But I would never let them on me. Niggas, they been trying to clone me. And they know that I'm the one and only. Eyes closed, praying for my home.
Woosah. Fuck the hoopla. I saw what I saw. Fuck what you saw. I've been on my day to day. Disappear like David.